When I wandered through Bruce Wakefield and Jerry Grossnickel's garden, I found a surprise around every corner. A low-lying boggy area has a pond with water plants and even a miniature dinosaur. A dry hillside is chock full of Mediterranean plants. Although Bruce and Jerry both work in the garden, each has his own specialty. Jerry is the garden engineer.
All of the rock walls, the garden paths, the lawn, that's sort of my bailiwick.
Bruce chooses the plants.
I'm a plant fanatic. I can't not buy plants.
It's okay. There are others, Bruce. We're with you.
With its eclectic mix of plants and design styles, this garden in Portland, Oregon is unique. Even the weather is a little different.
We're standing in your front garden, but I just have to say, I'm a little bit chilly at this moment. The Pacific Northwest, and we're in Portland, you get some pretty chilly weather even in the springtime.
And we get lots of wet weather.
Lots of wet weather. And it can change in a day. The sun can be out and then it can rain. The conifer, is that a Lawson cypress?
Yes.
Right next to the Japanese maple. They really anchor the house here. And the alliums and the phormiums. Look at this. Do you leave this out all year?
Yes,
Wow.
most years it comes through pretty undamaged, although if we get an ice storm, it'll set it back some, but then it bounces right back up.
I'm calling it phormium, but for people that aren't familiar with it, New Zealand
And
flax.
Right. It seems that the greener selections and bronzer selections are hardier than the more pink and red ones.
These giant alliums are so much fun.
Right.
You'd almost want to touch them, I'm sure.
Yeah, Allium Christophii.
That's a beauty. And even when the seed heads dry, do you leave them to dry until, or are you too tidy to?
No, we leave them. Yeah, they make a good structural accent. We don't spray paint them though, like some people
I
have
don't
been.
recommend.
We haven't done it yet.
Okay, well, I'm with you. I'm into the natural dry. And the phlomis, I don't know a common name for phlomis. I just know it as phlomis. But that's a good doer, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It really is. And also, that particular phlomis, if you let it, the leaves drop in the fall and take it and spray paint it, you can use it indoors as a great indoor
Dried flower.
So you're
yeah.
not against spray painting flowers.
Once they're dead.
Once they're dead, and not in the garden.
And the view down here, this is really sort of creates another entrance to your garden, to the lower terraces.
Hopefully it entices people to then go into the garden once they see it from up above.
Are you kidding? Once they pull into the driveway, they can't wait to run. If they're like me, they get out of the car and start running.
Off the back of the house, a new stone patio area looks more like South America than the Pacific Northwest. Some tropical plants overwinter in the greenhouse, but many stay outside year-round thanks to the rock walls warmed by the sun.
We're off the back of your house. This is on this patio, which really affords a great viewing spot for a lot of the lower garden. I guess this wall against the greenhouse must hold a lot of heat.
Yeah, this really gives us a chance to push the zonal limits for our area. We plant almost tropical plants. We're also looking at one of my very favorite plants, Lobelia tupa.
Tupa, T-U-P-A?
T-U-P-A. It's from the coastal plains of Peru.
Wow.
And just loves this warm wall.
So it comes back for you every year?
Every year. Yeah, we've had some plants in the garden for almost 12 years.
And that'll be in bloom with, it looks like brilliant red flowers.
Brilliant, yeah, lipstick red flowers on that really interesting green foliage.
This phormium with the bright red color, it's almost actually it's got some coral in it, doesn't it?
Yes, this is Guardsman. It is probably my all-time favorite phormium.
It's plunged in a pot here.
Yeah,
Well, this is one we want to make sure doesn't die in the winter.
And what's the name of this one, Bruce?
That's Agave attenuata. It's another tropical plant that we put outdoors in the summer, and then we'll dig it up and put it in the greenhouse to overwinter it.
And the tetrapanax, now that's drama. If you want to have drama in the garden, just plant a tetrapanax.
Yeah, that's a variety called steroidal giant.
I can see why. We're standing really at one of the lower points in your garden. We're to the, if you look up at the house, we're at the bottom of the hill. Really, this is one of the lowest points, and this is where it all started, isn't it?
It sure is. We did the pond the very first thing. The first landscaping effort was the pond. Since this area was so swampy, we knew that there had to be a water feature on the property somewhere, and this was the logical place.
Now, how many years ago did you start this venture, the garden?
Oh, basically 15.
Almost 15 years
So
ago.
15 years.
It was all trees.
all
It
trees.
was
Oh,
all
yeah. This
trees.
was, yeah, where we're standing was a forest, basically.
Wow. And you have the beautiful lawn areas. How did you come up with where to put your beds and where to put the lawn? And
The pond was the initial shape that we came up with. From the shape of the pond, we were able to figure out what the shape of the lawn had to be. Because we wanted the eye to sort of follow the shape of the lawn down to the pond.
you've got trees like this tupelo and the Japanese maple. How long have these trees been here?
The tupelo we've had about probably 14 years. The maple here is actually probably about 12 years old.
Wow. The lady's mantle under the Japanese maple, that combination I just love of chartreuse and the burgundy or purple foliage.
This stand was put here because it was the only thing that could grow here.
So the soil's not great?
This
soil was really,
this
really
is a
awful.
clay bank, and it's one of the things that actually enjoys the clay.
In fact, if you dig down under our soil, you've got clay with no roots. It is so dense.
What
But
do you
it's-
do to get such lush plants?
Well, every single year we mulch.
So this is mulch
Yeah.
right here.
Right.
Okay, that's great mulch.
It's basically recycled garden debris.
From your
And,
property.
No,
No, we need
You
it
have
by
to
the
import the mulch.
truckload.
we have to import it.
Coming up next, a rose so fragrant they just had to put it in a bottle. And later, a plant with a split personality. Stay with us.
This
I love the way Bruce Wakefield and Jerry Grossnickel take advantage of the different microclimates in their garden. Each section has its own personality, from a natural woodland to a colorful border in the English style.
This arbor really frames our view, looking both this way and that way, down the path and up the hill, and this rose, that is spectacular.
Right, this is Constant Spry.
And that's one of the
Yeah.
David Austin roses?
Yeah, actually, it might have been his first
I can't reach it to
creation.
smell it, but, oh, here's one over here I can smell. Oh, wonderful. You've trained it up over this arbor, and that's a tall arbor.
We designed this double arch so we could basically put more rose canes on it and made it tall enough that people wouldn't feel like the roses were going to grab them as they were walking through.
I like the
'Cause
details.
We try and add a little bit of extra design to each piece.
Well,
and,
mind you, this is bare sort of in the winter, so we want something to look at that's
yeah, so it
interesting.
gives winter interest.
Right. The rose right across from Constance is particularly nice for its
Oh, this
fragrance.
one?
Yes.
Gertrude
This
Jekyll.
Gertrude
Oh,
Jekyll.
Gertrude
and-
Jekyll.
Yeah, actually, Jerry, didn't you say that this was one rose that was actually used in the perfume industry?
Actually, it was developed for the perfume industry.
Really? I didn't know that.
Right,
Gertrude
yeah.
Jekyll?
Gertrude Jekyll.
What zone are you here?
Well, some people say we're zone 8, some say 7 or 7B, somewhere in there. And I guess really it also depends on where in the garden we are.
Lots of microclimates.
Yeah, this side being the wetter side, whereas the back side of the house is very Mediterranean. It's our hot, dry side of the garden.
So this is this a medium side or?
I'd say this is sort of on the wet side, the little bit cooler side, so we can grow things like delphiniums. This particular delphinium is a German hybrid developed by Karl Forster.
I love the delphiniums with the roses. That's classic English.
Yeah,
Isn't
this
it?
is a very English-style garden here.
Well, this is va-va-voom, isn't it? This Japanese iris,
Pretty
this is
showy.
I had to come down and look at this. That's just beautiful. The stone, is that from this part of the country?
It is, yeah. That's Columbia River light gray basalt. And all these walls have drainage lines behind them, and there's drainage lines in the paths themselves. So we've taken care of the water problem here.
Otherwise, this would be a big hillside of mud.
Oh, yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Look at that cardoon. That is
Yeah,
big.
It's big this year, all that warm spring rain.
Yeah.
It's architectural, and it's, even though it's a biennial, it usually puts up little pups, or at least for me.
Yeah, this one's been coming back, gosh, 6, 7 years.
It's been here a long
Yeah,
time.
and it self-sows around just a little bit.
Well, this is a keeper.
It is.
What do you say?
Yep, that's a
Okay,
keeper.
this is-
Okay, good.
And the old-fashioned bearded iris, that color, that soft, sort of peachy
It's an
Yeah.
unusual color.
apricot.
Right.
It goes well with that blue-gray background too, I think.
And this hillside looks almost Mediterranean-like.
Yeah, this is the dry side of the hill.
I have to stop and admire this
Okay.
verbascum. Look how beautiful that is.
Right. This is one of our natives, Verbascum olympicum.
And is that
Yeah.
easy to grow from seed, Bruce?
Yeah, actually, it's pretty easy. This one self-sows around a little bit like a foxglove, and we allow it to do that.
And this plant, now this is the Lonicera, or that Bagason's gold honeysuckle.
Right, right.
And look at that. That's the size of a small car.
Yeah.
It's just,
It
or
would be a
it's
little bit
giant.
different if Bruce didn't come out here and trim it too.
Yeah, I trim it. In fact, there's a little bit from yesterday. We'll hide that.
But then you've got the tricolor sage down here, and
Yeah.
that's very Mediterranean in
Right.
feel. And this conifer, you've got that beautiful urn in front of it, sort of Mediterranean again.
Cupressus macrocarpa fine gold. It's one of
Oh.
the selections of the Monterey cypress.
Okay.
It keeps that golden color all year long. In fact, it gets even a little more brilliant in the winter.
And look at
There's
the
a-
poppies down there. Look at the size
Yeah.
of those poppies. You guys must use vitamins or lots of fertilizer.
And we use no fertilizers.
No fertilizer. I don't believe it.
If you like variety, you'll love this plant. It's 3 plants in 1. Stay with us.
As I spent time with Bruce Wakefield and Jerry Grossnickel in Portland, Oregon, I found out one of the reasons they love to work in the garden. Bruce is an accountant and Jerry is a lawyer. The garden gives them both a chance to take a break from the workday world.
It's such a release of tension from a normal desk job that I have. It's almost a spiritual thing in a sense.
One of the reasons I like to garden is that it's really a very effective way to get your exercise. It's something that you can see you've done. It's just a wonderful feeling when you've got it done. You can see, oh, I did that. Doesn't that look good?
Some plants are really good at seeding themselves around. And this Echium, is that right?
Yep, this is Akhirin Vulgaris, and it does self-sow really well. It's a really interesting plant. I like it. But you'll notice the flower on this. It's got purple, it's got white, it's got blue. And when the plant itself gets a little older, sometimes the plant will differentiate and have a completely blue flower or a completely purple flower.
Or completely white.
Here's another one, a completely white flower.
Echium vulgaris, and is that, it sort of has a Mediterranean feel to it.
Certainly does, and it loves to grow on this rock wall where it gets good drainage and good sunshine. The problem with this vulgaris variety is that it does tend to get leggy and will flop in our rain. Otherwise, it's a wonderful plant.
This urn is just quite striking here. It makes a beautiful focal point as you're coming down the path, and I like the way you've used the Akhirin as a little sort of carpet.
That's kind of the idea we got from a trip we took to Ireland. This one garden we went to had these incredible focal points at every sort of path ending. And this was the focal point for this path along here. And it's just the right spot. And it also happened to be a focal point for the path going that way and that way. So when we found this pot, it was a Chinese pot that was built in the 1800s.
And the focal point here, this incredible pergola.
The shape for this pergola is like an onion dome from, the Russian churches, except it's not nearly as dome-shaped, and we didn't want it to look like a failed souffle or something, so it's sort of right between.
Right, and we tried to have the spirals give a sort of a image of vines going up the columns.
And it does.
And then we
And
decided
then you put
to
the vines on.
put the vines on.
Entirely superfluous when you get the vines on.
Well, it's unique.
It is unique.
And
yeah.
it's wonderful. And you look, the view, you can sit and have breakfast and look down on your wonderful pergola, inspired by the Russian onion dome or something or other. And then you get these glimpses down to the garden. I love the framing again.
Right, the viewpoint here is quite nice.
Even though this garden is in the city of Portland, wildlife is everywhere. And Bruce and Jerry never know what might show up next.
Suddenly there appeared in the lawn a whole herd of elk. The wildlife have sort of adapted to the garden. We now have a very large population of chipmunks, of squirrels, and of birds that all depend on the garden.
This part of your garden is we're really in the woods almost.
Yeah, we're right next to the woods here. If you look really closely, you can see our deer fence down there.
You have a deer fence.
Oh, well.
We need a deer fence.
We didn't have a deer fence for 14 years, and boy, it's made a big difference this year.
You don't come across a plant like this in most woodlands. You have to admit. Cardiocrinum
Giganteum.
And look
Yeah.
how these are going to be the flowers. Look at that.
It's really a giant lily.
A white trumpet with a purple throat.
The common name is
Giant Himalayan lily.
giant Himalayan lily. This takes how many years?
It takes 7 years from seed. Then the plant, after it blooms, dies. The main stalk dies, and it'll throw out side shoots the following year. And then those take 4 or 5 years to get a big enough bulb to push up that big stem and bloom again.
These are just
Yeah, another
breathtaking.
Himalayan plant.
primroses are Himalayan?
Some are from the Himalayan part of Burma, the very farthest north of the country, and from Tibet.
What they really like is very wet soil and sunny conditions. These particular varieties. So the reason we knew they would work here is because we directed all of our drain lines down to this spot. Anytime we water the garden, the excess drains off through the drain pipes right down to here. So this is always kept wet. This is the bog area.
And what really helps set it off, I think, is this Japanese maple,
Yeah.
that dark, and then not another, but you've got several Robinia freesias on your
Right,
property.
right.
That chartreuse, burgundy, and
Yeah.
woof. You couldn't have planned this any better.
3 cheers for the red, white, and blue. A patriotic moment in the garden. When we continue.
Get great ideas.
The more I learned about this garden, the more I was amazed. The property was on the market for years before Bruce Wakefield and Jerry Grossnickel bought it and began to turn an overgrown clay hillside into a lush landscape with plants from all over the world. The land that nobody wanted is now on every gardener's must-see list.
Ceanothus, I don't know which one that is.
I believe that's Victoria.
Victoria, but that blue is just,
Isn't that great?
it's hard to find great blues for the garden, and it's beautiful next to this little daisy. That's a
Tanacetum niveum.
Tanacetum niveum. So that's a
Yeah.
perennial.
Perennial self-sowing.
Self-sowing?
Yeah. We saw a lot of that in England next to gravel paths, and it just seemed to really be a nice filler plant.
Love that blue and white, and then the
Yeah.
poppy behind us. And
We
this
got
is
red, white, and blue here.
red, white, and blue. We're patriotic, and we're in the Mediterranean. This is an
Yeah.
extension of the Mediterranean garden off
That's
the back
correct.
of the house.
Right.
Is this another structure you've designed?
Yes, more recent structure. Given the Mediterranean garden, we thought the sun might be appropriate. So.
Well, and every bench needs a backdrop. If you have nothing behind your bench, people are not going to sit in it for some reason.
They'll feel like they're going to fall off.
Fall around, right.
Feel
And this goes,
exposed.
wow, this goes down. Look at those colors down there. You've got oranges and blues and salmons and This bench just has plants behind it. People sit on it?
No,
No, probably not very often.
not when they've got the bench over there.
Yeah.
Why bother with a concrete bench?
And you've continued your wall here on the hillside. This also helps, again, break up the garden.
Yes, it really does.
This is great.
This was
Wow.
our very first structure. We were trying to focus the eye along the path here, and yet between each of the pillars is a framed view. This is our wild garden down here. We call it wild because anything that spreads or gets too tall or has really
It's the wrong color.
really hot colors, we let them duke it out.
Oh, look at the poppies, the grape colored and pink. And
This particular rose is just a wonderful color, and it's a repeat bloomer, blooms all summer.
what is it?
Dortmund.
Dortmund.
Dortmund,
Yeah, it's
right.